Okay, so as Mary Jean said, my name is Katherine A. Weir, and I identify as bereaved. I've been identifying as a bereaved person since March 10th, 1993, when my 6-year-old son died. And this talk coincides with me releasing my new business. I have been working with bereaved for many years, been asked about bereavement for many years, but this is me starting to take another direction to help the bereaved on my own. So you're the first people to get to experience this, to hear what I'm going to do, a little bit about my business as far as what I offer to people and how that helps. So and my process is my process. I'm not going to say that so-and-so did this or so-and-so did this. This is about what I've learned in my 29 plus, it'll be 30 years next March, of bereavement. So I identify as, well, I am, I guess, a daughter, a mother, a grandmother, a writer, an editor, a visual artist, a volunteer, and a healer. Out of all things feathers, fur, and other types of skin, as well as trees. Anybody who knows me knows I have a passion for trees. So my spirituality is my spirituality. I don't define it on any organized religions. My studies have been Hinduism, Wiccan, and Indigenous. So I work on those principles, basically much more nature orientated spirituality. So you don't necessarily hear things like God in my talk, but you will hear a lot about the soul or finding peace, but those are my, I guess, my code words into spirituality. In the document I shared with you, I gave you some of my creds, which have all contributed to making me who I am and how I have worked through bereavement. As an academic, I studied critical thinking, which is a huge portion of what I do: women, Indigenous studies, knowledge and histories, and creative writing. If you know anything about personality dimensions or true colors, which is also something I was trained in, I'm a blue, which means I'm filled with compassion. I am filled with feelings. So often you'll hear me be very, and with my creative self, you'll hear me be very creative in the way I describe things or in the way that I interpret or present them. And you'll also hear the academic side of me. I volunteered for many years for hospice here in Guelph, working as, well, I say working because I was doing up to 40 hours a week at the end. Well, the last few weeks were 70 hours. So I was there a lot, and working as a co-leader for workshops, doing one-on-one counseling, and doing end of life. It's not so much counseling, it's just sitting with someone and being there through the process of death, which to me is an amazing thing. It's not that it's not hurtful, it's just an amazing experience to experience someone at the end of their life. Also, meditation. I did led meditation. I was also trained as a paramedic, trained through bereaved families in Ontario. And years ago, I was trained along with Ann Hughes there as through Human Service Community, which teaches a lot about self-awareness, learning yourself on the inside so that you can be a better person on the outside. And I'm also a published author. And one of my stories I have published is about the near loss of one of my closest pets, my little man, who's sitting over there. So any questions that you have, I think because you're muted, it's not going to happen, but to the end. But if you think that I talk too loud, or if you can't hear me, or if I talk too fast, just do something, wave, here, something, let me know, and I'll adjust that. So I do have my little talk here on paper. So sometimes you'll see me looking away at it. So I need to tell you why I wanted to do this presentation. I saw a posting by Anna on Facebook. I'm on Facebook with Anna, and she was asking for somebody to do something like this. And I thought, well, I'm just going to start this business. So maybe I contact Anna. From there, Anna and I started to chat, and have chatted quite a bit and had some really nice chats. And I thought, yeah, I'd like to do this, because not only does this give me experience in presenting to people to open up about this issue, but it also hopefully will give me connections worldwide where I can present my way of healing through grief. Now, for 29 plus years, I always say that, I have researched, read, asked about, trotted through, been asked about, talked to everybody, shared, cried, screamed, swore, honored, and listened about loss, grief, and bereavement. It's a huge part of my life. I know that the loss, I know what it's like to lose a grandparent, a father, a favorite aunt, a baby son, because Mikkel's always my baby. And multiple pets. And recently I lost one of my favorites, and last year I lost another one. So losing pets is very hard for me too. And what it is to help me, but to help others find a reason to laugh again, to smile, and who want to feel whole again, because loss can destroy you. My own program focuses on something that I learned from a friend of mine. When I was standing over my son's, and he was in his casket, my friend and mentor said to me, "What is it you want? Because you're going to have to live with this for the rest of your life." And, you know, it really stuck there with me, and it's stuck there with me every day. And it's like every day I ask that question, what do you want? To do with my grief, to do with losses, and how am I going to get that? Because I don't want to feel sad all the time. I don't want to feel pain, like just gripping pain, you know, like that loss where someone sticks their fist right through the wall of your chest and grabs your heart and pulls it, all while leaning on you and crushing the air out of you. That's what it feels like. And I don't want to feel like that all the time. I have moments of feeling like that, but in the beginning, I felt like that 24 hours a day. So I'm going to define loss and bereavement according to me. Now, this comes from my years of research. This comes from my years of training. This comes from academia. This comes from hospice. This comes from everything that's put together that's worked for me and how I see it as what works. Because people always say to me, "Katherine, you do so well with grief. Like, why do you have all this positive energy around grief?" And it's because I've spent years honing the process of finding that positiveness. So to begin with, I argue from a personal and professional level that if you're experiencing or have experienced a loss, then there are 3 levels of pain that exist. And these are emotional, psychological pains. And they include this. What is loss? Loss is the start of the process, in quotation marks. It's the start of the process of loss in general. It begins with where the loss started. It doesn't have a time limit as far as the length of its life. There's no doubt that as time passes, it can be reviewed again. You can go back to the beginning of that loss. You can move past that loss. Loss is something that you value, and it's gone. So when that thing's gone, that's when you feel the loss. It can be the loss of self, the loss of a person, pet, place, thing. And it's heavily connected to the experiences of the psychological, emotional, or spiritual self. Now, now that we have the start, the loss, let's look at the grief. This is when the loss takes effect. It is emotional and psychological reaction to the loss of self, a loved one, a pet, place, a pet, a friend, friendships, relationships, home, and so on. I see grief as the period following the acknowledgement that the loss has occurred. Here's the reaction phase. And this phase is not, again, not limited by time. Grief because of loss can be a lifetime experience. I've been grieving, I say I'm bereaved for 29 plus years. I don't think that's going to change for the rest of my life. So it is a life experience for me. And healing can move it forward to the point that you take part of that healing, you've reached your wants and you put that on a shelf, but another want might come up. So I've done that with Mikkel. I actually had an epiphany last year with working with Atherton Drent, and where I was able to, for the first time in almost, well, that would have been almost 29 years, let go of Mikkel, let him go on to his own journey. I had to keep him with me up until that point, but I don't need to anymore. I know I can call him back at any point, but I'm okay. So now we've got the beginning phase of the loss. We've got when it takes effects. That's the grief. That's the intense period. And then there's the bereavement. This is the long term. I am bereaved. I am long term. In a reaction to the initial loss, it's the journey in response to the loss and can be part of both the loss and grief experiences. Bereavement, again, has a no time frame attached to it. Depending upon the individual, you could move quickly through grief or and the healing process, or it might be a lifetime journey. Science suggests this process can have negative effects on individuals if they do not move through grief, through this process, with health and life related restrictions affecting one's quality of life. I do agree with this argument, but at the same time, I argue there's no one size fits all. My premise is that no one can understand your grief fully. No one. I have lost a son, and for this, I can help other people with their grief because I understand that intensity of that loss. I understand the grief process, but no one knew my son. No one knew Mikkel as his mother. No one grew him in their belly. No one nursed him. No one raised him for 6 years. And while I did it with my husband and my other 2 children, still it's a mother's response to the loss of a son. So you cannot understand that, but if you've experienced loss, you can understand how that happens or what some of the processes you go through. And I can't understand anyone else's. I've been close to 2 young mothers who have lost their children, and there is a special bond with mothers that lose children. But at the same time, I don't understand their loss and they don't understand mine. But having been further along in the grief process, I was able to help them when they were in the grief period, when they were in the intense period. So my program, you'll often hear me say, my program is called Loss, Grief, Bereavement Counseling. And I discussed this with Ann Hughes there because I nicknamed it LGB, which, as many of us know, can be interpreted as lesbian, gay, and bisexual, which I have no problem with. But I like LGB. I like it and I'm keeping it. And if anyone becomes confused, then maybe they'll be lucky enough to come to somebody who can help them with their feeling of loss of self, maybe. Okay, so I am starting doing 2 types of workshops or two types of consultations with people. One is individual and one is emergency. So the type of individual, the first, there's the initial introductory meeting where we work through you tell me your story, and that comes a lot from Bereaved Families of Ontario. Bereaved Families of Ontario believe in telling your story over and over, because if anyone's been through trauma, they know that they need to tell their story over and over and over again, because it's part of believing it yourself. Do I believe that I've gone through this? And did this really happen? You know, did I really lose someone? Did my pet really die today? And it's learning to how to cope with that. So I need to have that telling of the story to connect with that person. The second is the discovery. It's a 10-week program, and it can be lengthened out, where we work through defining the want. And this is the core of what I believe. If you define the want of your loss, then you can at least have a starting point, a focus of where to go. Now, in that want, you have to define your feelings, because you have to get to the core of it. You can't have to get to what's making you feel yucky, horrible, what's making you feel happy, not happy, whatever. So you have to get to that. And when you get to that, then you can come up with a plan. And from there, we go into the further growth journey, which then works out the plans and further plans. Because I'll tell you right now, there's no one want. Nobody has one want. And in the bereavement process, you find out you have many wants, and they come up often. And I'll talk about triggers in a minute. And finally, I have the I am in need consultation, which you don't need any of the above, but you can call me anytime. I'm a great listener, been there, done that. And I can listen and direct you to places you can get help, or help you myself, or just be someone you can call, especially on anniversaries, holidays, times when it's just plain shitty and you need to talk. Now, the thing about grief, and anyone who's been or is in bereavement, is that you will learn over time that there are triggers everywhere you go. And it's like a field of landmines throughout your life. So you might step on this trigger and it'll be a flashbang, and you can't see for a while, and you're stumbling around and you're trying to figure out, what am I going to do? It might be one where it just blows your body all to pieces, and you're trying to pick up, pieces of you here and there and put them back together. And then again, it might be in the distance and you go, oh, well, I won't go over there. So it's different type of triggers. Now I want to use what happened for this occasion today. When Mary Jean put out the Awakening Spiritualities newsletter, she wrote my name wrong. She said I was Katherine Weir. So I'm going to show you through my own experience how I work through that using the want, the feelings, and the plan. So here's how it went for me. Now, I want to tell you, this wasn't necessarily a humorous experience. I can tell you there were some words said that might have had some exclamation marks and maybe some asterisks and, some things. There might have been a little bit of wondering if I was going to make it through the day or if I could do this. But this is what it's like. It said the name was Katherine Weir, not Katherine. And triggers started ringing all over for me. You see, I have a younger sister, and her name is Karen, and I have permanently removed her from my life. From the youngest age, Karen, oh, by the way, this is a real person. Anne will confirm that. From the youngest age, Karen has been a pathological liar and thief. As a child, I used to be so frustrated with how she could manipulate people with words and tell stories that weren't true. Ones that always painted her in a good light and others in a dark. And I was her primary victim. I would say my dad was second, then my brother, then my mom. But anyway, it was always, I always say better than worse than. She was always better than us, or we were worse than her. So better than or worse than. And I could not believe how everyone except a few, which I call the smart ones, fell for her BS. Like, just couldn't. And it wasn't until my mother was very ill about 10 years ago that things finally changed for me, because my mother finally clued in how truly evil my sister is. Even though she had witnessed too many unexplained and what the hell experiences herself to do with Karen, after 6 decades of my own living hell, and it has been hell with Karen, I got the apology that I not only needed, but deserved after years of being downgraded, because I kept saying Karen lies and Karen steals. Now everyone knows the truth, but from a point of pain, it's been a bittersweet long time coming. So when my name was listed as Karen, it brought up a loss of self and grief I have experienced over 6 days of having to deal with her, 6 decades of having to deal with her. Again, I went back to that space of people thinking I was the liar because Karen had so carefully crafted her story that I was always wrong. I went back to the space of hurt, rage, and anger. And yes, Karen had again stolen something I had worked my whole life at. This woman who had stolen from my children and who has flirted with, and maybe more, my ex-husband. And worse than that, she has told me that my children should be hers. Now, after sitting on my hands, an expression a professor taught me in dealing with anger. The idea is you sit on your hands, you don't type or write. Keep it to yourself. And in doing some deep breathing exercise, I calmed down and hence took a look at what the trigger taught me. So here's how I work. So in conclusion, I use my life bereavement and other life and academic skills to critically assess my anger, to put it in perspective, to step away from it, and to, in the end, laugh about the experience. Now, this is the short version of what happened. But all in all, it didn't take me decades of hurt to deal with this, and said, thanks to my learnings, it took me only a few days. You see, I asked myself, what do you want? And the answer is let go of the rage, because I do not and will not live with this feeling for the rest of my life. So while I thank you for allowing me to share this story, please do not print my name as Karen again. And finally, in the page that that Mary Jean uploaded for you, I have an exercise on it at the bottom, which you don't have to do now. You can do later. You can do while we're talking. I don't care. But in it, I give you my contact information, and feel free to contact me. I only ask that you identify where you come from. I'm a pretty careful person about people I don't know. Even my doctor called me last week and I hung up on her because I thought I didn't know her. So I'm pretty safe. And I'm also adding a special offer at the bottom if you want to use it. I'm not going to say any more about that. That's for you to find out. And finally, I thank everyone wholeheartedly for listening and participating. My want has been to come here this evening to release the new me and my take on loss, grief, and bereavement, and offer hope to those who, like me, are looking for ways to live life with more peace in my heart and my soul. I am happy. There's the feeling. I have done what I set out to do, and I am excited for what has to come. My plan now going forward is to help others to find peace in grief and loss, as I have. After all, my son's death was the biggest slap upside the head that anyone could give. And if I didn't learn from it, then what did his life mean? And what does my bereavement mean? My lifetime of bereavement mean? Now, the exercise that's on there, it's a sort of like the beginning of the process that I do. And it helps you to look at defining your want, looking at your feelings, and then we would go for a plan from there. But it gives you that beginning. And in it, first you have to write down a loss. Can be the loss of a pet, can be a loss of something in yourself, can be a loss of something tangible, your home, your job, whatever. And when I ask you to write things down, I don't say write full sentences, write blurbs, draw pictures, draw charts, whatever you need to do to get that knowledge out. And then once you've done that, explore feelings of what it was like to get that out, what that loss reminds you of. Now, I noted in here that the University of Alabama and many other academic institutions that study psychology and such suggest there are 6 basic feelings: sadness, happiness, fear, anger, surprise, and disgust. Anne and I learned 5. many years ago, but in those 6, they give you a place to start as you pull out your emotions. So write down your feelings and then ask yourself what you want. And I've given you some example of questions that might guide you on to how to get your want. And once you've got your want, you know where it is you're going. The journey is getting there. And that's what I work with, the journey to get there. So this is just a simple step on how to do the beginning of the journey. I just wanted to show you that it's not frightening. It's not scary to work through your bereavement, through your grief, through your loss. And it's highly rewarding in the end. I think anyone who knows me knows that I laugh a lot. I have a lot of dark humor. And I'm able to take my bereavement and apply it to everyday life, growing myself spiritually, growing myself emotionally, growing myself intellectually. And I like to share that gift. So that is what I have to share today. I'd love to know what you think. And if you have any questions or clarifications, I'm happy to answer them. Thanks.